hold still. Her voice was low, steady, the kind of command that didn't really leave me a choice. And yet, I didn't want one. Her hand lingered longer than it needed to, steadying me as if the slightest shift might ruin everything. She was 45, my trainer, and the sort of woman who didn't need to raise her voice to draw attention. Confident, graceful, the kind of presence that made a quiet room feel full. But behind the certainty in her touch, I swore I caught something else. A hesitation. A question she didn't speak. I was 24. Old enough to know better, young enough to feel every second stretch when she stood too close. The gym was quiet that night. Just the hum of the air vents, the dull thud of a weight being racked 2 rooms over. Her perfume clung faintly to the air, not strong, just a trace, like the memory of something you can't stop chasing. My shoulders tensed under her palm. Not from the weight I held, but from the warmth of her skin pressing through the thin fabric of my shirt. "You're breathing too fast," she murmured, almost to herself. I tried to laugh it off, but it came out clipped. "Hard to slow down when you're..." I stopped. "Too much." I bit back the rest. She tilted her head, studying me. Her eyes, green, sharp, but softened at the edges, didn't move away. If anything, they narrowed, as if she'd heard what I didn't finish saying. The seconds dragged. Her fingers adjusted slightly against me, brushing the line of my collarbone as though correcting my posture. But the correction lingered, fingertips tracing where they didn't need to. My throat tightened. She stepped closer. Not enough for contact, but close enough that I felt the heat of her body radiating. The kind of nearness that makes you wonder if the other person feels it too. "You're distracted." My voice cracked. I swallowed. "I'm trying to focus." Her smile flickered, small and private, like she wasn't sure if she should let me see it. "Trying," she repeated softly, her breath grazing the side of my face. "But not succeeding." The words weren't cruel, but they landed heavier than the weight stacked behind us. I couldn't look at her without giving too much away, so I stared at the floor, at the shadow of her hand resting just inches from my chest. Silence stretched, filled only by the faint tick of the wall clock. I thought she'd step back, pull away, let the moment dissolve. Instead, she held steady, her thumb brushing the fabric between us, so light it could have been an accident, except she didn't correct it. I finally looked up. Her eyes locked on mine, searching, holding, not letting go. The room felt smaller. My breath caught in my chest. Something in her expression, the way her lips parted, the faint tension in her jaw, told me she was fighting something too. I wanted to say her name. I wanted to close the last inches between us. But my body stayed frozen, waiting for her lead, waiting for the moment to break. Her hand slid, just slightly, down the line of my shoulder. Slow. Measured. Deliberate. "Better," she whispered. Her voice wasn't about posture anymore. Before I could answer, the heavy slam of a door echoed from the front of the gym. Footsteps carried toward us. Her hand dropped instantly, her eyes snapping away, as though nothing had happened. But the warmth stayed, pulsing against my skin where she had been. And I knew, so did she, that we had crossed a line we couldn't uncross. The echo of that door slam still haunted me the next day. We didn't speak about it, we didn't have to. But silence didn't erase the feel of her hand on me, or the look in her eyes before she pulled away. She was older, wiser. She knew how to keep her distance when the line was too close. And yet, the distance between us felt thinner every time we shared the same space. I caught her differently now. Not just as my trainer, not just as the woman who corrected my form and timed my rests. I caught the way her hair slipped loose from its tie during long sessions, falling over her cheek until she brushed it back with a flick that seemed almost careless. I caught the way her voice softened when she said my name, even when she didn't mean for it to. She never let it stay soft for long. "You need to focus on yourself," she told me one evening, as if the words carried more weight than she was willing to admit. "Isn't that what I'm doing?" I asked. Her laugh was quiet, clipped, almost bitter. Not always. I wanted to ask what she meant. But she turned away, adjusting the weights like the conversation was over. I knew fragments of her past, things she'd let slip between drills, the kind of confessions that only came when exhaustion lowered her guard. A husband she no longer wore a ring for. A daughter away at university. Nights that stretched too long when the house was too quiet. She didn't spell it out, but I could hear it in her pauses, loneliness pressed into her bones, the kind that no amount of strength training could fix. And me? I'd had relationships, sure. Girls my age. But none of them had her gravity. None of them made silence feel as loud as she did. Still, what could I offer her? A 24-year-old with too many impulses and not enough history. Someone she could shape, but maybe never lean on. I told myself to stop noticing the way her shirt clung when she leaned forward. To stop waiting for her perfume to reach me when she passed by. But the body doesn't obey the mind when the mind is already lost. Tonight, it was different. She lingered near me longer than usual, correcting my stance with hands that hovered, then pressed lightly against my shoulders. Relax here, she said, fingertips drawing the line of my posture. Her breath brushed the back of my neck. I felt my body stiffen. Not from the correction, from the closeness. Better, she murmured, almost to herself. Her hand didn't leave right away. I turned my head slightly, catching her eyes before she could move. There it was again, the flicker of something raw, something unspoken. She stepped back quickly, breaking whatever had been building. Her jaw tightened. You need to focus. But the words sounded like a shield, not advice. I wanted to push. To ask why she kept saying that, why she pulled close only to retreat. Instead, I stayed quiet, the silence heavy with what neither of us dared admit. Half an hour later, as the gym emptied and the hum of machines died down, I found her sitting on the edge of a bench, staring at nothing in particular. Her water bottle sat untouched at her side. You okay? I asked. She blinked, as if she hadn't heard me come closer. Her smile was practiced, faint. Just tired. It wasn't the truth. I sat down beside her, not too close, but not far either. For a moment, we didn't speak. The silence wasn't empty this time. It was thick, pressing against us, asking questions neither of us had the courage to answer. Finally, she exhaled. You shouldn't, look at me the way you do. My chest tightened. How do I look at you? Her lips parted, then closed again. She shook her head, her hair falling forward to hide her face. Forget I said anything. But I couldn't. The urge to reach out burned in my fingertips, and before I could stop myself, my hand brushed against hers on the bench. Just a touch, barely there. Enough to feel the warmth of her skin. She didn't pull away. Her fingers twitched once, as if she might move. Then they stilled. And for a long, fragile moment, we just sat there, hand against hand, silence heavy, everything we weren't saying filling the air around us. Her eyes lifted to mine again, steady, searching. She didn't let go. The next time it happened, it wasn't planned. Maybe nothing between us was. The gym lights hummed faintly above, most of the room already dark. We'd stayed late again, her excuse being that I needed one more set. I didn't argue. Not when it meant more time alone with her. She leaned in to correct my form, her hand brushing the side of my waist. I froze. The touch was professional on the surface, but too soft, too slow to really be just that. Her eyes lifted to mine. Close. Too close. The world shrank until it was only the sound of her breath and the pounding of my heart. You need to keep steady here, she whispered, her voice low, as if afraid someone might overhear even though the room was empty. I nodded, but my body didn't move. Her hand stayed where it was, fingers pressing just enough to remind me she was still there. Silence. Her gaze dropped, then lifted again, lingering at my mouth for a fraction too long. My throat went dry. I should have stepped back. She should have let go. Neither of us moved. The distance between us narrowed without a word. Inches. Less than that. Her breath brushed across my lips. I could taste the closeness, the danger of it. And then, the door creaked open. A man's voice carried in from the hall. Another trainer, calling out her name. We both jerked apart, too fast, too obvious. I grabbed at the nearest dumbbell, pretending I'd been mid-set. She straightened her shirt, her hair falling forward to cover the flush on her face. Here, she called back, her voice steady but tight. The footsteps passed, fading away. The door closed again. The silence that followed was deafening. Her chest rose and fell quickly, her hand brushing her thigh as if to ground herself. I couldn't stop staring. That was close, I said, my voice low, uneven. Her eyes snapped to mine. Too close. She meant more than the footsteps. I knew it. My grip tightened around the dumbbell. We can't keep, I started, but the words caught. Her eyes softened, just for a second, and that was enough. Enough to drag me back into the gravity of her presence. She stepped forward again. Not all the way, just enough that the space between us thinned until I felt the pull. We shouldn't, she whispered. I swallowed. Then why don't you stop me? Her lips parted, but no answer came. The silence stretched again, louder than any confession. My hand twitched at my side, wanting to reach for her, to erase the sliver of space still left. She didn't move away this time. And though the kiss didn't come, we stood there, breath against breath, hearts racing, closer than ever, held in the fire of something we couldn't name, and couldn't resist. It was raining the night it finally cracked. The gym was empty again, lights dim, the glass doors fogged from the storm outside. She stood at the far end, checking equipment, but I could see it in the set of her shoulders, too stiff, too restless. I walked toward her, my footsteps echoing. She didn't turn until I was close enough that the air between us changed. You've been avoiding me, I said. Her jaw tightened. I've been careful. Same thing. She met my eyes then, sharp, almost defensive. But something inside her faltered. You think this is easy for me? The words caught me off guard. For a moment, neither of us moved. Rain hammered against the windows, filling the silence she left behind. I stepped closer, enough to feel her warmth. Then say it's nothing. Tell me you don't feel it too. Her lips parted, but no sound came. She looked away, brushing a strand of damp hair from her face. My hand moved before I could stop it, fingers catching the strand, tucking it behind her ear. She froze. Her skin was warm beneath my knuckles. I let my hand linger longer than I should, the back of my fingers grazing her cheek. She closed her eyes, just for a second, but long enough. This is wrong, she whispered. Then stop me. My voice was low, too close, trembling with something I couldn't hold back. Her breath hitched, her chest rising sharply. When she opened her eyes, the battle inside her was clear. Fear. Longing. Regret. I leaned closer, my lips brushing the edge of her hairline, my words falling against her skin. I can't keep pretending. She swayed toward me, barely, but enough for me to feel the weight of her choice pressing against the air. Her hand lifted, fingertips grazing my forearm, hesitant, trembling, but not pulling me away. Lightning flashed across the windows, bright and sudden. Her reflection glimmered there, pressed close to mine, two silhouettes standing in a storm they couldn't control. People would never understand, she murmured, but the words didn't sound like a warning. More like an excuse unraveling. I don't care, I whispered back. Her breath brushed my mouth then. Inches. Less. My pulse pounded in my throat, every nerve screaming for that final step. Her lips trembled, opening slightly, the nearness unbearable. And then, footsteps. The faint squeak of shoes against the hall outside. She snapped back, eyes wide, her hand slipping away from my arm as if burned. My chest ached with the sudden absence, the almost. But she didn't leave. She looked at me, her voice breaking on a single line that left me undone. If you knew what this could cost me, the door handle rattled. And in that suspended second, between desire, fear, and discovery, we hovered on the edge of everything. The door never opened. Whoever had rattled the handle must have thought the gym was locked and left. But the sound was enough. She pulled away fully this time, putting the width of the room between us. Her breathing was uneven, her hands pressed flat against her thighs as if holding herself steady. I stood there, every muscle in me coiled, waiting. Finally, she spoke, quiet but sharp. You don't know what you're doing. Yes, I do. My voice came out rougher than I meant. You're the one who won't admit it. She spun to face me, her hair loose now, falling across her shoulders. Her eyes burned with something I hadn't seen before, not just fear, but anger. Do you think this is some kind of game? You don't understand what it would cost me. Her words sliced, but they didn't push me back. I stepped forward, slow, deliberate. Then tell me. Don't leave me guessing. She shook her head, almost laughing, but the sound broke halfway. God, you're too young. You think risk is romantic. You don't know what it's like to lose everything. That hit deeper than I expected. My chest tightened. Maybe not. But I know what it's like to want something you can't walk away from. Her mouth opened, then closed. She looked at me, and something in her expression shifted, a fracture, like the weight she'd been carrying cracked enough for me to glimpse what was beneath. I was seen, she whispered. My stomach dropped. What? She exhaled, her voice trembling now. Last week. One of the other trainers, he saw us. Not everything. Just, too close. He didn't say anything, not yet, but, she pressed her fingers to her temple. He knows. And if he talks, if this spreads, her words cut off. The revelation hung heavy in the air. What had felt like a secret world between us suddenly felt exposed, fragile, breakable. I moved toward her again, instinct pulling me closer. She didn't retreat, but her hands trembled as she brushed past me, pacing. This can't happen, she said, almost to herself. It shouldn't have even started. I reached out, catching her wrist before she could turn away again. My hand held hers, warm, trembling, alive. But it did. Her eyes lifted to mine, wide, unsteady. For a moment, neither of us breathed. The storm outside pressed against the glass, wind rattling like the world itself wanted in on the secret. Her hand twisted in mine, not pulling free, but gripping tighter, as though she hated herself for needing the contact. You don't know what you're asking me to risk, she whispered. I stepped closer, our bodies brushing, heat radiating between us. Then tell me to stop. Tell me you don't feel it. Her chest rose sharply. Her lips parted, but no words came. Instead, she looked at me as though I'd already undone her, as though the walls she'd built were collapsing under their own weight. I lowered my voice, leaning in until my breath stirred the loose strands of her hair. You can't. Her eyes fluttered shut. Her forehead tilted forward, just enough to rest against mine. The contact was feather-light, almost accidental, but it was more intimate than any kiss I'd ever known. The air between us crackled, fear, desire, guilt, all tangled. When she pulled back, it wasn't far. Just enough for her whisper to cut the silence, if this happens, there's no going back. I held her gaze, steady, unflinching. Then maybe we don't go back. Her hand slipped into mine, fingers interlacing before either of us could change our minds. And in that charged silence, in the storm pressing against the walls, the choice was made. The storm outside had softened to a low rumble, but inside, everything between us surged louder than thunder. Her hand was still in mine, fingers trembling, not loosening. For a long moment, neither of us moved. We just breathed in the same air, too close, too charged. I could feel her pulse racing through her skin, and I wondered if mine was just as wild. You should walk away, she whispered, her voice unsteady, yet she didn't pull back. This is the moment. right here. If you go now, it all disappears. No one gets hurt. I swallowed hard, staring at her, at the way her lips pressed together like she was trying to hold back everything she felt. And if I don't? Her chest rose sharply. Her gaze flickered over my face, stopping on my mouth for one impossible beat too long. Then I'm ruined, she said. But the words didn't sound like fear, they sounded like confession. I lifted my free hand, slow enough that she could have stopped me. I brushed a strand of damp hair from her cheek. She inhaled sharply at the touch, her eyes fluttering shut, then opening again as though she'd lost ground in a battle she'd fought too long. I don't want to ruin you, I murmured. Her hand squeezed mine tighter. You already have. The silence cracked open between us. Not empty, thick, humming, undeniable. She stepped forward, closing the last inch of space, until her body brushed mine. I could feel the warmth of her, the heat radiating where our shoulders, our hips, our breaths collided. Say it, I breathed, my forehead lowering to hers. Her voice broke into a whisper, almost like a prayer. I want you. Everything after that was messy, no hesitation, no careful distance. Her hands clutched at me as though she was afraid I'd vanish, and my arms wrapped around her like I had no intention of ever letting go. We weren't gentle. We weren't polished. We were just human, raw and undone by the weight of wanting and the terror of what it meant. When we finally broke apart, foreheads still pressed together, her breathing ragged against my skin, her eyes locked on mine with a clarity I hadn't seen before. This doesn't end here, she said, more certain now. If we do this, it changes everything. For both of us. I nodded, my hand cupping the back of her neck, grounding her. I know. And I'm not walking away. Her eyes glistened, but her smile, small, broken, and real, was the bravest thing I'd ever seen. For the first time, there was no pretense, no hiding. Just us, standing in the center of a storm of our own making. And in that moment, we both understood, whatever came next, neither of us would face it alone. The storm had passed by the time we finally let ourselves breathe. The world outside felt washed clean, but inside, I was still holding on to her like the rain might come back at any second and take her away. Her forehead rested lightly against mine, her breath soft and steady now, though her hand still gripped me as if loosening would mean losing. I traced my thumb along her knuckles, memorizing the feel of her. You're still here, she said quietly, almost in disbelief. Of course I am, I answered, my voice low but certain. I told you, I'm not walking away. Her laugh was soft, edged with nerves, but it faded into a sigh that sounded like surrender. She leaned into me fully, her head finding the curve of my shoulder. For the first time, she didn't try to hold back. And for the first time, I didn't feel the need to prove anything, I just wanted to be right there, with her. I'd been so afraid, she admitted. Afraid of what people might think. Afraid of what it might do to you, to me. Afraid of how much I wanted this. I held her tighter, my chin brushing the crown of her hair. I don't care about them. I care about us. And I think, maybe that's enough. She tilted her face up to me, her eyes shimmering like the storm hadn't really left, just softened into something gentler. You're too young to know what enough means. Then teach me, I said, without hesitation. Her lips parted, but no words came. Instead, she reached up, resting her palm against my cheek. Her hand was warm, trembling slightly, and when she pulled me down, it wasn't a desperate kiss, not rushed or stolen. It was slow, lingering, like she wanted to make sure I understood what it meant, that this wasn't an accident, or a mistake. When we finally broke apart, she pressed her forehead to mine again. Her smile was fragile but real, a quiet promise more powerful than any vow. Maybe we're both too old to keep pretending, she whispered. I laughed softly, not out of humor but out of relief, brushing a thumb across her lips as if to keep them curved. Then let's stop pretending. We sat down together on the edge of the studio bench, her body leaning against mine, her hand sliding into my palm with an ease that felt both new and inevitable. No words, no explanations, just the comfort of her weight beside me, the rhythm of our breathing sinking as if we had been waiting for this moment far longer than we'd ever admitted. For the first time, I didn't feel the storm inside me, I felt the calm after it. She was still older, still complicated, still a risk, but she was also mine. And I was hers. And in that quiet, wrapped in the warmth of her presence, I knew, whatever came next, we'd face it together.